Let's see. Little recording light click on your side.
Yep, I got it.
All right, I'll kick us off. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Western Huntsman Podcast. This is Jim Huntsman, your host, coming at you from the Broken Town studio and brought to you by Eastman's Hunting Journals. Thanks, guys, for being here. We are just kind of trugging along right through November here. Hopefully, a lot of you guys are out there chasing whitetail and late season elk. And I don't know if I think there's still a couple muley seasons open and definitely some bear seasons open. So this week in this episode, I've got my new friend Cliff Gray on the podcast, and I've been following him for a long time, and I've been watching his YouTube for a long time, and man, he's a killer. I'm really excited to have him on the show this week. And so, Cliff, I appreciate you joining me, man.
Yeah, of course, Jim. Thanks for having me.
So, tell everybody where you're at, dude.
Yeah, so this time of year, I go to Puerto Rico, and usually I'm down here for I don't know 4 or 5 months. That basically the cold months up in the mountains. So
Yeah.
me and my wife have been doing this for the last few years, actually since I sold my outfitting business. So the last operating fall that I had would have been actually 3 falls ago. So
Mm-hmm.
when I owned my outfitting business. So after that, when I sold my business, we got into this mode of living half the year basically in the Caribbean, and then half the year up in Oregon and some other places. I'm still doing. It's funny how life leads you different places, and you think you're going to go one direction, but you end up kind of getting back into the orbit. And I feel like that's what hunting has done with me and guiding. It didn't take me
Mm-hmm.
very long to get swooped back into guiding. So every fall I'm going back and guiding up in the States, which I enjoy. It's a different perspective on it, Jim. I think when you're outfitting, particularly if you do it for quite a few years and you deal with a lot of clients, your perspective drifts away from like the guide's perspective. So it's actually been really nice the last couple of years to spend part of the year just guiding and not
Yeah.
running a hunting business. But yeah, that's the breakdown of my life. I've got other family that lives in Puerto Rico. I've got a brother who's lived down here for a few years, and he's got kids the same age as mine. So it made sense. And the ocean side of things for me is like it's funny. Like the analogy I'll use is I'm so naive and I'm such an amateur when it comes to tarpon fishing or spear fishing or those sort of things. But they're still an obsession of mine, and I've got
Yeah.
like the total beginner's bug for it. So this time of year, I try to work on those endeavors, and it's cool, man. It's like a fresh adventure for me.
Yeah. Heck yeah. I'm super jealous. I've been to Puerto Rico a couple times. And to
Okay,
be
cool.
to be honest with you, Cliff, most of those trips I don't remember much of, and I did not get to do much fishing, and so that's pretty cool. I mean, who wouldn't want a setup like that where you're kind of escaping for the winter and getting out of the cold? I'm just to be honest with you, I'm like not in a state of depression, but it really is a bummer. It's already November. And I don't know what happened to September. October was a blur. And I just like the thought of going back into, having to throw the coveralls on constantly and getting on the tractor to plow the driveway out because we live on a homestead here in Western Montana. And I mean, we just
Okay,
get
sure.
pounded with snow, and
Oh
it
yeah.
just I don't know, a guy gets burned out after so many years of doing that, and so I could definitely see the appeal to spending the winter down there. So I don't know, maybe
Yeah,
you
man.
go ahead.
I don't know if it's something I'll do. I don't know if it's something I'll do the rest of my life, Jim, but I enjoy it. But I will say, like what you describe, those winters, and I spent lots of winters probably in a really similar situation where, it's just living took a lot of energy,
Yeah.
plowing
Oh man.
snow and all that stuff. And it's funny, man, because I think that kind of winter makes a guy tough. I really do.
Totally.
But just a few years of going down to the Caribbean for winter, you really quickly revert to being a total weenie, man. Like I'm gonna go up. I'm gonna
No,
go
I
up
don't
on
think
a
that's
short
true.
short lion hunt, and I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I want to go back up to the mountains this time of year and freeze my butt off.
Right?
So there's good of both, man. And everybody's different. Personalities are different. I variety tends to be maybe my vice in terms of adventure and
Mm-hmm.
on that front. So it's good and bad, man.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. No, I think getting back to your point, man. Once you've been hardened by a few good winters in the mountain, I don't think that toughness ever goes away. So I think you're good. You're in the clear. But
That's good to know.
yeah, I just I and when you say variety, I would have a tough time being as much as I bitch and complain about the winter and the snow. There's something very much, about that makes it home for me. And so not being
Yeah,
in the
sure.
mountains in the winter, I don't know. I don't know how I'd feel about it, except for if I was wearing flip flops and fly fishing for tarpon, my tune would definitely change, I'm sure. So,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
so
Yeah.
Cliff,
Well, but there's something about that season change. But yeah, go for it,
yeah,
Jim.
yeah, just kind of having, yeah. But you're and now real quick on that. Now you're out of like hurricane season and stuff down there, right?
Yeah. So technically, hurricane season ended about 10 days ago. I always laugh, and the running joke I have is that'll be the end of hurricane season until the next big one hits a week later. You know
Yeah,
what I
right,
mean?
right.
So it can still happen, but the big risk, there's a sigh of relief in most of the Caribbean pretty much the last day of October.
Gotcha. How'd you get into outfitting?
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny story, man. I grew up on a cattle ranch in Eagle, Colorado, at least part of my childhood,
Hmm.
and long story there, but I spent part of my childhood there. My dad was a cattle rancher, and he was an outfitter. He had some outfitting permits out of the ranch that he managed and ran cattle out of. We had grazing permits and that sort of thing, so that just led to an overlap with outfitting. And so I was always around horses, mules, packing, elk hunting, that sort of thing. And then I actually my early 20s, I did I just worked a normal career. I worked in finance for the first 3 or 4 years at an undergrad in business school, and I had a funny thing happen. A, a bunch of different events occurred where I had started a business and I sold it, and I found myself back in Colorado just because I knew I was going to take like a mini retirement. It's kind of analogous to where I am right now in life. I
Hmm.
sold that business. I was like 24, 25. Uh, Myself and my girlfriend moved back to Eagle, Colorado at the time, really just to ski. And through all this time, like I've been an obsessive hunter since I was a kid, and
Yeah.
being around the business as a kid. And like I said, the livestock thing was always a part of my life too, and it really the horse and mule packing deal. But anyways, I didn't go back to Colorado for that. We really went back there just to ski and have fun for a year, while maybe I started another business or something. Just kind of had a little peace of mind. And there was always an outfitting business that my dad talked about and all the old time outfitters talked about, kind of in that Eagleville Valley. And it had been developed on the other side of the highway, the other side of kind of the divide of those counties over there. And it was up against the flat tops. And when I was a kid, it was legendary because it was big and there was a big elk herd there. They had a lot of commercial use days, and they were kind of, in the outfitting business, there's not a lot of businesses that kind of have at least some level of scale. A lot of people do it
Hmm.
as a seasonal thing, but this one was notorious for being, a fairly large scale in the spectrum of outfitting, right? And so I had always knew about it. And then, anyways, when I got back there, my wife and well, my girlfriend at the time, we drove up to where those permits were. I was just like, I want to go up there and see how those guys are doing. And I had heard that the business had shrunk a whole lot over a bunch of ownership changes, and one of the old time outfitters had passed away at a fairly young age, so it had been disrupted. Anyways, I drove up there, and the last switchbacks to the trailhead where these guys packed out of, and all their horses and mules went through. I saw an older guy walking down the switchbacks in like maybe, I don't know, 18, 20 inches of snow. And it was like, it wasn't that late, man. Maybe like the 25th of October or something. But anyways, he was walking a mule down, just the one mule. So I drove up there with my Jeep and I rolled my window down. And I started talking to him, and it turned out he had been kind of the interim owner of this outfitting deal. He kind of bought it because he owned some adjacent property. And I got to talking to him, and I was like, Jim, you ever think about selling this thing? And he looked at me and he goes, you better fucking believe it. And within 20 days, I had bought it from him. And sorry, Jim, if
Interesting.
I didn't even ask you a curse, and I apologize.
Oh man, no,
But
I'm a Marine, man. Good, say
Oh,
whatever you
okay,
want.
all right, yeah, yeah. That was basically the conversation I had with him, and within 2 weeks, I'd basically closed on buying the business, and I really thought to myself, you know what, it'll be like a hobby project to build this thing back up, and then within 2 seasons, it was my full-time gig, and I was having a good time, and I expanded it beyond that. So yeah, long-winded answer. But really, it was not planned, is what I would say.
And Cliff, how long did you run that company for?
I ran it for 11 years.
11 years. Is like, you talked about growing up, being an avid hunter, being real passionate about it. Is like entrepreneurship, is that something you've always kind of leaned into as a passion, or something you fell into? How did that come about?
Yeah, it's weird, Jim, because I came from a family of entrepreneurs, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, and I think I had this realization in maybe very recently in the last 2 years of my life that I took a lot of like a mentality that basically was maybe instilled in me as a kid. I took it for granted, and that was, I was always around people who, like my parents did the American dream, man. Like when I was a kid, I remember being pretty damn poor. And then I remember, in my 20s, my parents being pretty successful,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and I saw that, and my parents always made their own way, and I never even viewed it as entrepreneurship, because like my dad, after being an outfitter, after being a cattle rancher, in his 40s, he went back to vet school and became a vet. And when I was a
Oh,
kid, I was like,
really?
oh,
Wow.
yeah, when I was a kid, I thought, well, it's not that weird. Now I think about it as a grown man with little kids and stuff, basically, same age as him. I think like, holy smokes, man, like that is you got to be willing to take those leaps. So I think that, have I always been obsessed with like growing a business and being an entrepreneur and making a ton of money? I don't think that was my obsession. I think my obsession in life has always been that I don't ever plan to really work for somebody else and depend on somebody else. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't, sometimes I'm very envious of people that are okay with that and have very traditional careers, and are successful that way. I've guided a lot of those people. I have a lot of those people in my life who are friends, and I don't. I'm always touchy about this because I don't want people to feel like I shun that, or I think that's a bad path in life, because I get asked all the time from people like, hey, I want to be a guide, or I want to be an outfitter. And I'm like, I'm very careful about it now, because I realize my brain is maybe wired a little bit different than other
Mm-hmm.
people. And
Absolutely.
uh and I think traditional career paths can be, for a lot of people, are a better choice, man. And
Yeah.
even in the context of this world, right? Like the hunting world, being a guide or an outfitter, or even a an entrepreneur that owns a bunch of real estate or owns any sort of traditional business, those are not necessarily the best paths to hunting a lot. A matter of fact,
Yeah.
like they're probably some of the worst.
Yeah.
You know
Some
what
of the
I
worst, for
mean?
sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
it's so
So,
dependent on what it is you do. I don't know.
oh yeah,
I really like what you said about your dad being in his 40s and going back to veterinary. You said veterinarian school, right?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's I think that a lot of people need to hear that message. There's so many people they get up into late 30s, you know, or late 40s even, and into their 50s, and they act like they're too old to start something new in their life. And hearing stories like that is, I think, inspirational for a lot of people. I mean, shit, I'm still blown away. I'm in my 40s. I'm in my early 40s, Cliff, but still I'm in my 40s, but I still feel like a young man, and like a fresh start is right around the corner if I needed to, you know. And I love having that feeling and that, and hearing stories like that. And I heard I've got this buddy of mine who's like 68. In fact, he was a guide. He just started his own business like a year ago for the first time in his life, and he's killing it. You know, at 68, most people
Okay,
are just
cool.
like retired and golfing at that point, you know. And
Sure.
so no, I love hearing stuff like that, man.
Yeah, no, I think, and I don't know much about your background, Jim, but I'm guessing that if that's your feeling about it, you've probably like gone through some big like pivots in your life, and
For sure.
I find that I find that people who get to do that at a young age, they have an advantage because once you've done it a few times, like you're not as worried about it, and maybe it's a confidence thing, maybe it's a practical thing, maybe you just kind of know how to maneuver. But I'm with you, man. Like I know a lot of people. I'm probably just a few years younger than you, Jim. I know a lot of people that think that it's so unsurmountable, but I think once they do it once in their life, regardless of age, like they can makes it a lot easier, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. There's a couple factors that go into that. You know, I just started another business this year, but this it's not my first one. And I'm you know, I really enjoy business ownership and entrepreneurship and stuff like that. But you know, it's so personality dependent. You know, I think a lot of it is based on certain people's risk tolerance factor, and a lot of times your risk tolerance is a lot higher when you're in your 20s than it is when you're in your 40s. You know, and I don't know, I can't speak
Sure.
to 50s or 60s because I'm not there yet, but you know, a great example. I have a super high risk tolerance, Cliff, but my wife is the exact opposite. So you know, sometimes it's nice because we'll balance each other out. She'll accept a little pushing from my end, and I'll accept a little pulling from her end, and it works out. But anyway, yeah, no,
Sure.
that's great, man. So what? So now that you're outfitting business, you sold it, right?
Yeah, so I sold it and then I ran it for 1 year after that.
And so what's on the docket now, man?
Yeah, it's a valid question. So I've I have become, and I never would have thought this like 3 or 4 years ago, if you would have proposed that this is what I was doing and what I was focusing on, I would have laughed at you. But I've actually been very focused on the YouTube deal and the dissemination of information and helping, people get into elk hunting, get into, do it yourself hunts in the Western states via that dissemination of educational stuff, basically, and trying to help out people. And I kind of
Yeah.
fell into that, honestly, Jim. Like I started creating the videos really when I had the outfitting business, really as a practical thing, right? Doing gear lists, doing, hey, this is what the expectation of when you show up and we're packing you on horses and mules, this is what it looks like. And I did all that really for the practical reason of just having to deal with less questions, right? I mean, I dealt with enough hunters in my business that I was doing hour and a half, 2 hours of emails every day of my life. And so I made videos to try to mitigate that just as a practical tool for me. And it did. And after I sold the business and I literally for 6 months, I didn't do anything but play in the outdoors, you know. But
Yeah, I don't
after
blame you.
that, yeah, after that, it started to trickle back that, hey, if I do these, I think that I can get better and better at doing these videos, maybe broaden the subject and improve in that regard. And I think I can make it into something. And in the last, 6 months, it's grown a lot. I get an absurd amount of emails, absurd amount of direct messages. people send me pictures of bulls they killed, and they tell me that this video or that video helped them, and that's addicting. And I don't know if that's a good thing or not, Jim. Maybe it's like me allowing my ego to run the show. Like, oh, like I'm like this stuff. I always thought I was bullshitting myself, but this stuff seems to work for other people too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's my main focus. I've been working on that, and part of it is trying to help people, and part of it's also just getting better at it. And that's probably the dork side of me. Like, hey, I really want to get better at making these videos. Even now, I can look back at videos I made 2 years ago and be like, man, these are garbage, or just I can't believe how many times I stuttered or said like or him and hod or
Oh
any of
man,
that stuff.
I
So
do. I
I enjoy that
yeah.
improvement.
Yeah, that part's really fun, man, and it's I beat myself up over being on this podcast because for some reason, Cliff, when I get to recording, I like start stuttering or something, and I can't pronounce words right, and I've totally mispronounced words on it, and people will email me, and then I'll feel shitty about myself, and but it happens. Man, your YouTube is huge, dude. Let's see. I always just kind of link to you'll post like a video, and I'll go to it there. I've never actually been to your YouTube page. The main page, which is just Cliff Gray, right? YouTube/Cliff Gray.
Yeah, just my name. And
And
yeah, it's growing rapidly, really, in the last couple months in particular. I think I've got close to 15 million total views, and like the run
yeah,
rates, like I think I mean, it's somewhere between 150 and 200,000 views a day right now, which I don't even know how
wow,
I don't know how that's possible.
that's nuts,
Uh,
man.
I know,
That's
dude. Like,
fantastic. Do,
um, but anyways,
do you ever worry with some of the stuff out there, like this woke culture kind of thing, where YouTube's like, oh, if you're showing firearms in your videos, they're gonna suppress your videos or take them down or whatever. Do you run into any of that kind of stuff? Because you've got a big platform here.
yeah. So do I worry about it? I guess part of my answer is, do I worry about it long term, and that's more of like my business mind, right, and the entrepreneur part of my mind.
Yeah.
Do I worry about building equity in something that really takes me a lot of work, and people can watch it, and they probably, yeah, I think I'm at like amateur quality still, but I'm improving all the time. That takes me a lot of work. So part of my mind is, hey, is there this inherent risk in spending a lot of time in building equity in this? Yeah, I think it's a valid concern for everybody that's doing firearm stuff, hunting stuff, really anything. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy, Jim, because that can extend to a lot of things now. I mean,
Oh man,
I
yeah.
like it can extend to things that in my mind are absolutely, I can't even believe are an issue, like butchering animals, those sort of things. To me, it's laughable. I mean, obviously, if something is done, that's just gory for no reason, or wasteful or whatever, like I could understand some concern around that from a platform's perspective. But things that are just about consuming animals or preparing hides or things like that, to me, that to be controversial is hilarious. You know,
Hmm.
like,
It's
I, you know, I, it's
it's
crazy.
it's such it highlights the vastness of different types of people in our one country. The two sides. I don't know how to. There's such disparity in the way some people live versus the way like guys like you and I live. I mean, and what we see as normal and respectable, and what we see as just kind of like the norm is like upsetting to some people, and
Yeah.
that's what surprises me. And it's they do things too that are like foreign to me, but it's not upsetting to me. I don't understand why.
Yeah,
Well, I guess I do.
you're not going to go out of your way and
Yeah.
take your time to go disrupt their thing.
I don't
Um,
want to interfere in anybody else's life, man. I want people to live how they want to live, but just leave me alone. You know what I mean?
yeah, and I have maybe a little bit different thought on it than a lot of people that, particularly in the hunting space. And it's a more direct answer to your question. These videos, I get 99% positive energy via the videos, and
Uh-huh.
it's variable depending on what kind of video it is, of whatever. If videos really hit and they kind of go like quote viral, you're gonna get everybody because it's just a scale thing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I've got a video, I got videos there, these reels on Instagram or something that pop to millions of people. You're gonna get more weird feedback because you're starting to hit people that are out like that don't have anything to even, they don't even understand what's going on in the video, right? So in that case, I just ignore it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just don't worry about it. Now, from a platform perspective, I personally haven't had trouble with YouTube directly other than demonetization. Anything that's, that's working up an animal, face caping an animal, that sort of thing, it gets demonetized and I don't care. Because from my perspective, it's, look, they probably have reasons for that. Those reasons are actually specified. I know when I post certain videos that they're not gonna like kick me off YouTube, but they're gonna demonetize the video, and it doesn't hurt. I'm not getting like punished. That's just how it is because
So
how it's
it's
their advertisers are the issue there. You know
yeah,
what I
that makes
mean?
sense. And so
Now
it's
I'm having a very I'm really kind of, this is a very narrowly focused point of view on it because I think there's these bigger, broader issues we talk about, Jim. Like, yeah, is there political bias in the platform as a whole? Yeah, but I'm just talking about my little niche world with it.
mhm.
I just follow their rules and realize that some of my videos are going to be demonetized, but also some of those videos become my most popular videos and they help a lot of people. And I don't care because those people are going to associate, they're going to see it, they're going to find it helpful, they're going to see that I'm producing that for them, and then maybe down the road when, however I'm deciding to monetize that brand that's helped them. I don't really care that I didn't make $5 more off of the video advertising.
Sure.
Does that, I mean, and maybe that's the wrong way to look at it. I don't know.
No, I mean, I think that in the current climate and the situation that you're in, that's really the only way to look at it without letting it like I tend to obsess over things that I think might be problems sometimes. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And sometimes it's not super healthy, Cliff, but I didn't realize that they just demonetize like that one video. They won't like demonetize your whole YouTube channel. And so um I don't really use YouTube much for what I do because I just put out audio and it does go onto YouTube, but it's just audio. There's no
Sure.
video or anything like that. And it surprises me too how many people listen to that thing
Oh
on
yeah.
YouTube. It's
Yeah.
pretty
Oh yeah.
cool.
Sure.
I got a question for you. I we had talked the I'm trying to remember how because we've been talking for like a couple of months or something and finally set this up to be able to jump on together. You went on Joe Rogan and that's a big deal, man. So like I appreciate the fact that you come on little old me my podcast after going on like the biggest podcast ever. What what kind of like feedback did you get from hunters and non-hunters after going on that? Did you have like backlash from like non-hunting type folks that maybe wouldn't have known about you before that, or how like what was a give me like a rundown of how that happened?
Yeah. So, when I when I went into it, I actually thought there was going to be more of that, Jim, just because this platform's so huge. You
Uh-huh.
know, the there what I mean, I for sure got some, and it's again, it's just it's narrowly focused on a couple of the subjects we talked about. Like we talked about lion hunting, we talked about wolves. I got a lot of weird emails and messages and stuff regarding that.
Yeah.
Um, but I just got in the mode of ignoring it, and and maybe, and I don't know if this is healthy or not, but I didn't like a lot of the comments on the stuff that gets like millions of views, like, clips from his podcast. I kind of refuse to look at the comments because I mean, look, if you read a bunch, if you read 100 straight comments that say like, hey, who is this skinny guy that looks like a bird that's dying, that's starving to death. You know what I mean? It's gonna hurt
Uh-huh.
your feelings, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
so I'm just like, I'm not gonna read it because I know I'm a scraggly little guy. I don't need to hear 100 strangers tell me about it or
Dude,
whatever.
it
You
does.
know what I mean?
It does
And
not matter what you look like. If when you do go somebody's always gonna find something, man.
yeah, but I just use that example because
Yeah, yeah.
what I was gonna tell you is my wife will read them to me because she
Oh no,
goes through them, and that was one of them. They're like, these people are calling you bird boy, and I'm like, oh man, wow, that hurts.
bird
But the
boy.
best ones, I mean, some of them are pretty funny. Yeah, there's a bunch of pretty good ones on there. But yeah, I just tried to ignore it. In terms of the specific things, the kind of the anti-hunting crowd. Yeah, I got some of that, but it wasn't. I choose to ignore it. None of it affected my day-to-day life, and
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
and I think our conversations in there, and maybe this is part of your thought process on it. I do worry about anytime I have a conversation with somebody that's got that kind of following, or even on my YouTube channel, and I make a video, and I inadvertently say something, or something is construed a certain way, and then that video gets hundreds of thousands of views. That concerns me, man. Like, I don't want to reflect poorly on some, hunting and fishing, something I really enjoy, and I know a lot of other people really enjoy.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I do think about that a lot.
I think that's a valid concern, and I'll be honest with you. Anytime Rogan has like some hunting personality, or hunting industry related individual on his show, there's always a little bit of concern from my end because like what we were saying earlier, where what our perception is and what we're used to and what we expect and what's normal to us is so foreign to other people out there, and it could be misconstrued or misrepresented. But I've had that concern, but for the most part, man, I don't think that there's been anybody that has gone on a big platform like Rogan's that I know of, especially recently, that is like misrepresented or represented in some kind of negative way the hunting lifestyle, the lifestyle that is hunting, and like you did a great job representing hunters, and that's what you're doing when you're going on, when people listen to my show, Cliff, they're like 99.9% of the time they're hunters. They're like-minded folks like us.
For sure.
When you're talking about a show like Rogan's, that's a whole different ballgame. And so I feel like you did a good job representing everybody as hunters, and a lot of people he's had on have done the same. And so it's just kind of cool how that. I think it's an important thing because there's, when we look at the future of hunting, we've got this certain percentage of us that are active, passionate hunters, and this is like our lifestyle. This is what we do. And then you have almost an equal but slightly smaller percentage of the population that are actively anti-hunting folks. It's those people in between that aren't one way or the other that I am concerned in terms of winning hearts and minds for the future of hunting in the as we go forward. And thus far, I don't know. I feel like shows like Rogan's I think do a lot more good than they do bad. And there's people that'll totally disagree, and I'm going to get a bunch of nasty emails over it. But that's how I feel. I watch this stuff. I pay attention to it. What do you think?
Yeah, no, and I've heard a lot of the arguments against, Rogan just getting a ton of exposure to hunting. I've heard arguments against channels like mine on YouTube, and there's some valid points there, and it's a really tricky subject. But what I will say is that I think you nailed it. The majority of people really don't care about hunting. I think as hunters, we have to consider that just because somebody's not into hunting doesn't mean they're anti-hunting. The majority of
Exactly.
people, the majority of people I know outside of the hunting world, they just don't care. They're more concerned that we might go into World War III here. They're more concerned about, the economics of the country. They're more concerned about their mountain bike trail. They're more concerned about, uh, there being more pickleball courts at the tennis club, that sort of thing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Oh,
they have
absolutely.
they have
Gas
other
prices are
things.
way more important
Yeah,
to
yeah.
them than deer season,
Like it's not even on their radar. But what I do believe is that I believe a lot of those people, if they do get into a discussion about hunting or they see information that is disseminated about hunting, they're actually pretty rational about it. I think a lot of people who, take the Rogan thing for better or worse, and I greatly appreciate him having me on. He really is a very genuine, great guy, Jim. But take that in for better or worse, that has kind of defined a part of me publicly, right? Like people who, if me and my wife meet a new couple, a week later they Google me or they go at my Instagram, they're gonna see that I was on Rogan, right? So it like defines me. It's like, oh, that guy was on Rogan, and then they go look at it, and it's about hunting, and maybe when I met them, we didn't even talk about hunting. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. They
So,
don't even
but
know.
now that's going to be the next conversation because they're going to listen to the podcast and we're going to talk about hunting. And the vast majority of those people are pretty rational about hunting. A lot like they're like, yeah, humans, it's a circle of life deal. We all watched Lion King, like it's
Yeah.
like we're part of it. So I think we as hunters sometimes we negatively look at the majority of people as if they're all anti-hunting. I don't think that's the case.
No,
I
it's
actually,
not.
yeah. I think there's a lot more, you know, there's a lot more potential for support from that population than we all think.
There
Um,
was a Oh, go ahead. I cut you off there.
no, go ahead, Jim.
There was a poll recently, and I can't remember where it came out. And I'm already Cliff. I'm pretty leery of polls anyway. But this one came out, and it was talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of like 86% of the population approves of hunting and views hunting as a positive thing. And I think that a lot of that is because despite some of the negative press that the 2% of bad heads out there that give hunting a bad name, and despite some of the ways that Hollywood has portrayed hunters, and some of the other things, some of the so-called influencers that may have done something wrong that have kind of blackened an eye of hunters, I think that deep down, hunting is like this innate thing for humans, and especially in the American culture,
Sure.
and it's this thing that has just kind of always existed. And I think that there's a lot of, especially dudes, I think there's a lot of dudes that like live in big giant cities that envy people that have the ability to hunt. And I hate to say it that way because they have the ability to hunt, but they don't think that they do. They think that there's this
Yeah, it's just a,
big, they think
it's
that,
just,
yeah, the
it's
barrier
like
to
a
entry is
foreign.
way out of their league or something. And it's not, but and that's why, yeah, I don't mean to beat the Joe Rogan thing. I actually forgot you went on Joe Rogan, man, and now I'm remembering the
No,
episode. You guys
no,
had a,
no, dude.
uh,
I love talking about it. But I
yeah,
think you nailed something. And he has triggered this in a lot of the male population, and I think it's totally fair to talk about it in that context, Jim,
yeah.
because the majority of hunters are males. The majority of his audience are males. So I think that it has triggered that in a lot of the male population. I get tons of messages about it from guys that are from 20 to 60 years old who have never hunted, who want to get into hunting. He's probably the source of the stimulation, or he stimulated that interest in a lot of people. What I would say is I totally agree with you that I think really is inherent. It was funny, like a week ago, one of the guides that used to work for me sent a picture, and we had this in September. I guided 3 back-to-back mountain. Well, I actually guided 2 mountain goat hunts back to back, and then I had my own personal mountain goat hunt like right after that. So I had like three or
Yeah, I
four.
saw that.
Yeah, it was fun, man. But I had three or four guides who had worked for me over the years, and we did the guide hunts together, and then a few of them stayed, and we did my hunt. It was just an awesome, 10, 12 days. But the picture he sent me was like all 4 or 5 of us sitting there skinning this mountain goat, right? And we're all, sitting on our butt in the rocks. We've got the goat there. We're all working on it. And it was actually a video, and we're all chatting with each other. And it was funny because I saw that and I'm like, that's what groups of guys have been doing for the vast majority of human existence. To think that
Yeah.
that is not inherent to part of who we are is hilarious to me. I mean, we've been doing that way longer than we have been living in the structured environment that we do now. And by way longer, I mean like by
Way longer.
like 1,000-fold. Like there's so many men who, and not just, I mean, there's so many people who have lived that kind of lifestyle in the history of the earth their whole life. They didn't even know that historically or in the future any other alternative would exist. And they're the
Mm-hmm.
majority of people who have lived on this planet. So it's
Yeah,
totally inherent.
absolutely.
Totally
Absolutely,
inherent, man.
man. And I get like I can get overly philosophical about some of this shit, but I think it's good to talk about. And I think that when you look at society today as like this from like this I don't know how to even put that. Anyway, I'll go back to that. When you're looking at a society where you have this vast amount of people that have um depression, and people are just, they seem unhappy, and they seem trapped, and they seem like they have this feeling like this is as good as their life's going to be. And I think, and again, this is just my opinion, and like you said, when I don't know if we were recording yet or not, but feel free to disagree with anything I say, man. I like good, robust discussions, but I feel like that the reason behind a lot of that is because we've taken the struggle out of being a human. We've taken that struggle from, especially for men. And again, I say this a lot, but I don't speak to women, and I don't speak as what I feel women are, because I'm not a woman. I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't
sure.
know. But for me, what I see, because I've gone in my life, I've sat in a cubicle at some corporate job, and it was one of the most unhappy times of my life. I don't think I even made it 6 months. It's not my thing. And now here I am. And if I went to a larger, metro kind of area, I can probably do financially better than what I'm doing now. But the thing is my wife and I, we have acreage. We live on a homestead in freaking Montana. I'm this morning I spent time tracking a black bear that came in and stole one of my chickens. And you know what pisses me off, Cliff? The bear took my favorite damn chicken. It's one of those Plymouth Rocks. And she was like, she had this weird crooked toe, sweetest chicken. And we had 16 chickens. Anyway, I know where the bear took her. I basically trailed it right off my property, and now I can't find the bear. Anyway, uh that's the kind of stuff, as upset as I am about losing my favorite chicken on the
Yeah.
homestead. It's that adventure side of it. I'm tracking this bear that stole something from me, and I live in the wild, and I think that hunters, they can live, and it doesn't matter where you live, by the way. I don't care if you live in downtown Denver or Seattle or somewhere, but you connect with the outdoors. You connect that primal thing that men require, that challenge, that thing that is where you're not just visiting nature as like a photographer or something. You are taking part in nature because you are pursuing what is wild. And that's what it is. And I think that the lack of that in so many humans, and especially men in America, has created this downfall of not only just manhood, but just general happiness and satisfaction. And I'm just
Oh
kind of
yeah.
rambling, Cliff.
No, no, no. I
That's
mean,
how I
what's
feel.
crazy? So So the way I always laugh about it because I actually think a lot of it is physiological, right? It's funny because I will
Mm-hmm.
read this stuff. I'll read, just some article that's like a self-help article, or like I read a lot of stuff on nutrition and fitness and that sort of things. I don't really talk about it on YouTube or anything. That's not really I'm no expert in it, but it's something that me and my wife are into. So I like listening to like Peter Attia and these guys on
Yeah.
longevity. It's just kind of interesting. But it's funny because a lot of the things that they statistically find make people live longer, healthier, and happier lives. When they describe them, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what hunters do. It's like, oh, have a community of close friends that you go do things with. Get sun,
Mm-hmm.
get physical exercise every day. You know, have goals, and it's like, yeah, you're talking about what hunters. That's like the whole thing. Like
That's what we
the
do.
whole the activity literally encompasses everything that you're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so no, I agree. I think a lot of people can find happiness in it, and I think to extend your point, I think that a lot of these other things that people get obsessed with, both men and women, they seem so ridiculous and irrational to us, like CrossFit. I know people who are like crazy into CrossFit. I'm not into CrossFit, and I'm like, why are you so into CrossFit? And I find in my mind, I'm like judging them for like, why, like, you're getting hurt all the time. It seems crazy. But
Mm-hmm.
then I remind myself, that's exactly how I view hunting. This is where I'm in a world that is so structured and probably very different than what we've evolved or were put on this earth to be dealing with. We're in a very different environment now. We have to go to these little avenues to trick ourselves into that exposure, and it makes a difference. I don't really. It sounds
Yeah.
it sounds crazy that it wouldn't, but I think a lot of it is actually just physiological, right? Like if we don't do certain things with our body, we're not going to be happy, and we're not going to be healthy, and we're not going to look forward to the next things. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and it's such a world of like just dark clouds when like the thought of I remember that life again, nothing wrong if you're the kind of guy or gal that has the discipline to sit in a cubicle for 8 hours. Man, I salute you. This is why I don't sit in hunting blinds or tree stands. It's just not my thing.
Yeah, yeah,
But
sure. But
but
if you're doing it and you're unhappy, you should change it.
yeah, and that's I think that's what a lot of people get caught up in, and they get caught, they spend an hour in their car in the morning, they sit in a cubicle they all day, and they go to McDonald's for lunch, and then they spend an hour on the way home, just in time to, catch a game on TV or watch Netflix or something, and they go to bed and they repeat, and it's this existence is the I don't know. I think it's a root cause of some of the woes that we see as Americans. But yet, there's another side of it where not everything is bad. Looking ahead, not everything is woes. I think that we just have a tendency as humans to focus on the negative. And
Oh yeah,
actually, if you
sure.
watch the news, we are on the brink of World War III, and all Americans hate each other, and
Yeah.
it's just a mess. But I
Yeah, we and
stopped watching it.
we do it in the microcosm of hunting too, man. Like
Yeah, we do.
everything I see is that this is going to be banned, that's going to be banned, this species is falling off a cliff, and all of that. And I think personally, still to this day, Jim, I think we're living in the good old days of hunting in North America.
Oh,
Not
I
that it's
agree.
going, just I think the dynamic is changing, but as a point in time right now, I mean, we can all go on a bunch of hunts every year with a little effort and a little money.
Yep,
You really can.
absolutely. Yeah, I think you're right, man. I think we are living in the good old days. And I remember growing up, everybody, all the old timers, back in like the 90s, they'd talk about, oh, hunting was so much better 15, 20 years ago. And I don't know, maybe it was, But I remember like our big thing was pursuing mule deer. And in the 90s, the muleys weren't doing great. And I see a lot more muleys today than I did back then. Right. And so I just, and that's just my personal experience. And I just feel like the, our grandkids, that it's going to be a different world. The hunting space is going to be a different place. The lifestyle is going to change. And that's partly why I started this show here, Cliff, is it concerns me. And what do you see? Somebody who, I mean, to put it into perspective, you've been guiding, you've owned an outfitting company, you've got this huge YouTube, you're a wildly successful hunter. You take all that and pack it together, and you've got this great perspective. Like, what do you see as the biggest threat to the future of hunting?
You know, the there's a so one of the things I think is the biggest threat is probably a lack of decent opportunity in the context of that all the states who have produced a lot of Western kind of that type of public land hunting opportunity, their mindset about maximizing the yield of that has shifted a little bit. So for me personally, I think that in the next 20 years could affect hunting in it may change the dynamic regardless of what we think about the North American management style of wildlife. I think it might change the dynamic of hunting where to get decent opportunities, it's going to be more, more and more, a little bit more of a European model. I think that could be a challenge to hunting in the sense that it could change the dynamic. So that's the biggest concern to me is there's not this focus on more elk hunting opportunity, more quality elk hunting, like the supply side of hunting on public land. That concerns me.
Yeah, me
For
too.
for like the whole population of hunters, that's one of my concerns. I have less concern over access to public lands and there being more public land and all of that. I get in these I get in not arguments but conversations with people where that's their primary concern, and I'm very much more concerned about there being decent opportunities for people so they can really enjoy this, right, and get the bug for hunting. So to me, it's kind of a convoluted answer, but that's my biggest concern, and I don't know the solution to that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I totally on a like a very macro level. Totally. I'm smelling what you're stepping in. I don't know what the solution is either. I think that there's a lot of things happening in terms of hunters shooting themselves in the foot. But I'm like you, man. I don't worry. I don't sit and worry about the future of hunting because of what PETA says, right? I don't worry about
Yeah.
hunting because of major public land issues. What I worry about is public land not being accessible anymore without a fee. I worry about that kind of stuff, and that's going to take a lot of hunters' passion away. I worry about those kind of access issues. I worry about opportunity on that public land, and what is public land without wild animals? It's not going to be of value to the public anymore, so it won't be public anymore. I worry about that kind of stuff, and I worry about the culturally people being so far removed from hunting and wild things like butchering your own deer. I there's people that are offended by seeing that, and that worries me. That kind of stuff worries me if that spreads, those kind of things. So anyway, I know I promised you an hour, so I don't want to keep you too long here, buddy. But um, I offer a free service, Cliff. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, go for it.
For all the guides across North America. uh, because there's a lot of people that listen to this show, and some of them are going to eventually end up hiring a guide or an outfitter. And so, whenever I have a guide on the show, I like to ask what their top two things are that people do that piss their guide off.
Yeah. So I think my number one thing, and this is like one that I think irks guides, but it also will maximize people's enjoyment of hunts, and that's really when is the expectations of a hunt. When you're booking hunts, when you're researching hunts, really listen to so first try to find people that you can get that you feel are giving you a very honest opinion about what to expect on the hunt. And a lot of times that's because you know somebody who's hunted with that guide, they've hunted with that outfitter, so they're a trusted avenue to like book a hunt, right, with a guide. But when that guide gives you expectations of what to expect, what's the physical challenges you're going to face, how variable are the results of the hunt, those sort of things, don't discount those and think that you're always if it's a hunt that's 70% success rate, don't go into it reading that as 100%.
Yeah.
I think that is one of the things that gets people in the biggest trouble, is that it doesn't matter how much the expectations are set out to them. They can have this perspective that they're still unhappy if they fall on the wrong side of that from their perspective, or they didn't listen to that. Hey, you really need to be, this is a great hunt, high success rate hunt if you show up prepared, this way physically or this way mentally, or we're going to need to backpack hunt. Well, it turns out you've never slept in a backpack tent your entire life, and you've never worn a backpack with all your gear on it ever, so that's probably my biggest one.
Did you do that, Cliff? You take clients out on like a backpack hunt?
Yeah, we backpack hunted a lot of goat and sheep hunts.
Oh, did you? Cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
wow.
And they're fun. They're fun, and yeah, it's hard work though too, man. That's a young
Heck yeah.
guy's game,
Yeah.
But yeah, no, those are great hunts. That's my biggest one. I think I'm trying to think of what would be a second one in general. Like, I'll give you a general comment on guiding, because people always they always want to hear the horror stories. The thing I ran into in guide. Have you ever guided before, Jim?
No. Nope. I've
So
never guided.
guiding it, in any service business, you'll hear people say, "Hey, man, like, you know, 85% of people are great, but it's 15% of the people that ruin it for everybody else," right? They're going to be all your problems. Like, and they say that in any service business, if you're an accountant, whatever, right? I feel like in hunting, it's the same thing, but the numbers are actually way better, because 95% of hunters that I guided, if not more, were just phenomenal human beings. We shared an interest. There's probably a whole bunch of other reasons why they're just, compatible with, friendship. Most of my best friends are people I've guided, over the years.
Yeah.
So at least 95% of them are awesome. And then, 1 out of 20, 1 out of 30 just isn't there to have fun. So I guess that'd be my second one. If you're going to go on a hunt, be there to have fun. Don't be there to just kill something. That's I think there's nothing wrong with that being the goal and taking that goal very seriously. I'm not somebody to say like everything should be about, sunset pictures and all of that. I think you should have a goal. I think that's good, but be there to have fun, because that's what guides like. And absolutely, if you have that attitude, you're going to end up maximizing your guide, right? If you just
totally
I'd
totally agree
the whole time, guides don't work as hard. And I'm not saying they're doing it consciously, but if they got to deal with negativity, it wears on them, So that's that'd be kind of my other piece of advice, is just go into it with be positive about it.
I think, I mean, I could totally see that too, Cliff. And I've never been on a guided hunt, with the exception of a wild boar hunt down in Nevada one time when I was like 18. And
okay,
and not that I'm opposed to. I'd love to go on some guided hunts. I feel like one of the things, I used to be a struggling fly fisherman, and I had kind of earned this trip through the company I'd been working for. This was years ago. That sent me on a guided fly fishing trip, and the guy that was my guide turned me into an expert level fly fisherman in 2 days. Like literally, I don't know if I've been since I went on that trip with that guy, in which I didn't actually catch fish. It's amazing what somebody that does that for a living, what they could teach you. And so I'd be super interested to go hunting, like, especially with a guy like you, and spend a few days in the woods to learn and pick from your brain what you know. And I going back to what you were talking about, that was a long way of me saying I'm not disparaging people who use guides when I say I've just never really done it before. I've never been on a guided hunt. So
Sure. Yeah, but dude, I think that's like what you hit on there is a good perspective. I go on guided things all the time, Jim, like
yeah,
in
yeah.
the fishing world. And it doesn't irritate me because it's outside the expectations of the trip. But well, I'll give you like a hard example. I really want to spear a wahoo, which is like a pelagic
Oh yeah.
fish, right? And
God, that'd
they
be a
kind of
ball,
have
man.
this, yeah, and they kind of have a little bit of a mystique around them, at least in the spearfishing world. Like it's a goal for a lot of people. I really want to spear, and I've been with guys
Mm-hmm.
that do it, and this is their thing. They're very knowledgeable, and they're dealing with me, this like floating bobber, pale guy with sunburns and who's fairly incompetent in the ocean, right? So I realize they have a lofty goal, right? So, but the guy that takes me and just like chums up wahoo, you know is not really telling me what he's doing, maybe is passive about questions, that sort of thing, which I can understand. They're trying to work, throws me in and then hands me the gun and is like, point the, shoot the wahoo. That's kind of
Uh-huh.
fun, but that's nothing compared to the experience where a guy is explaining to me what he's doing, right? Because
Yeah.
really,
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
in my crazy mind, I'm thinking like I want to shoot a wahoo, but I really want to actually know how to do it. Like I really want to get good at it. So in maybe some other world 5 years from now, like I can teach my buddy how to do it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Oh,
To
absolutely.
me, the best guides are good at that. And I
Yeah.
may have a
They're
biased
teachers.
perspective on it, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I feel about it.
Yeah. I would totally I would totally that's the thing is if were I to go on a guided trip, I'd be pretty selective. I'd want to like call somebody like you and pick your brain about like who is the best at like being a coach and a teacher to walk you through the whole process of what's about to take place, not just somebody who
Yeah,
says,
yeah, a
hey,
guy that can
there
tolerate
there's an
questions.
elk. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
I think
yep,
that's there's a lot to be said for that. So yeah, the closest thing I've had to that in the last few years, I use Tag Hub a lot from Eastman's Hunting Journal. That's
sure.
my guide. Um, well, Cliff, this has been a really fun, satisfying conversation, man. I had a lot of fun having you on the show here. I'd love to do it again in the future. Um,
Of
I'm,
course, man. It feels like the conversation just started. So
I
we'll have
know,
to do it.
right?
We'll have to do it again.
We're gonna have to. I feel like I need to let you get back to the tarpon fishing, brother.
No, that's all good. Yeah, we'll do
Yeah.
it.
So
We'll follow on with another one someday. But I really appreciate you having me on, Jim.
yeah, no, for sure. Pleasure's all mine, Cliff. It was great to meet you. And for everybody listening, I'm going to have Cliff's Instagram handle and the YouTube channel in the show notes. So make sure you follow along and check that out. Cliff has some like world class YouTube videos. I really enjoy them. And Cliff, you enjoy yourself over there in Puerto Rico, man, and keep me posted, brother.
All right, we'll do. Thanks, Jim.
All right, thank you.